Hi, everyone. Hello. Welcome to a brand spanking new edition of the Indie Book Social. We're just going to let a few people flood in before we truly get started. Uh, so excited to be here tonight. I'm seeing the number climb up very slowly. If you're joining us for the first time, the Indie Book Social is brought to you by 6 independent Canadian presses coming together to talk good books, have fun, and to thank all of our lovely bookseller and librarian friends for your support. Thank you for supporting independent publishers, and thank you for supporting Canadian content. We could not get our books out into the world without you. For those who don't know me, I'm Christina Valenzuela. I'm a sales associate at House of Anansi and Groundwood Books. And if you've attended Indie Social before, you might recognize me as the woman running the PowerPoint and hitting play on the videos over the past few years, but not tonight. Tonight, I am your lovely host coming to you live from Toronto. We keep bringing this event virtually to you by popular request so that we can continue to invite booksellers and librarians from across this great continent on these lovely Tuesday evenings. So I showed you mine, Toronto. So now show me yours. Please let us know where you're from in the chat. I say as no one in the Vancouver. Let's go, BC. Hell yeah.
Don't be shy. We're not going to
Yeah, don't be shy. London, Ontario. Excellent. These are all excellent places. Sterling, Ontario. Incredible. Cool. It is always very cool to see where everybody is coming from, especially doing these virtually. But before we get into the fun, I do have a housekeeping note. Olivia is going to pop links to the ARC request form in the chat. And trust me, you're going to be hearing about so many incredible books that you'll want to check them all off and submit it at the end. And now, without further ado, let's meet the dream team. Friends, please introduce yourselves. I'd love your name, your job, your publishing house, its claim to fame, and of course, an answer to the icebreaker question. Since tonight is all about CanCon, Canadian content, what is your favorite piece of Canadian made content? It can be a song, a movie, an invention, anything. The world is your double double. I'll go first. I've already introduced myself. I'm Christina. I'm a sales associate at House of Anansi Press. House of Anansi was founded in 1967. You might recognize us for books like The Break or Zoe Whittle's, oh my God, Zoe Whittle, I'm blanking on her name, but The Break by Katharina Vermette and Sisters Brothers by Patrick DeWitt. And my favorite piece of Canadian made content is, generally speaking, Leonard Cohen. I love Leonard Cohen. I love his poetry. I love his songs. I wait for the day that I can go in the club and hear You Want It Darker. Okay? That's what I want in life. Love Leonard Cohen. Um, that's my CanCon. What's your favorite piece of Canadian made content? We'll go to Annick, Sarah Dunn.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah from Annick. I'm the publicity manager there. If you don't know, Annick is an independent Canadian children's publisher, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. Our probably best known title of all time is The Paper Bag Princess by Robert Munsch, illustrated by Michael Marchenko, which is one of my favorite pieces of CanCon, but another favorite piece of CanCon is Anne of Green Gables, specifically the 1985 TV movie adaptation with Megan Follows and the late, great super dream hunk, Jonathan Crombie. Yeah, so that's mine. Thanks for coming.
James, what's your favorite piece of CanCon?
Hi. Thanks, Christina. My name is James Lindsay. I'm the publicist at Coach House Books. We're from Toronto, Canada, celebrating our 60th anniversary this year. We are best known for books like The Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Meyer and 15 Dogs by Andre Alexis. And my favorite piece of Canadian CanCon is Fraggle Rock. Both the original series from the 80s and the revamp now, which is very good. It was made by two Canadian poets, written by two Canadian poets, Dennis Lee, who was one of the founders of House of Nancy, and B.P. Nicol, who was a writer and poet of Coach House Books. The street we're on in Toronto is actually named after him, B.P. Nicol Lane. And he wrote a lot of great kids' TV, like Fraggle Rock, The Raccoons, and The Care Bears, too.
Incredible. Biblioasis. Emily, what is your favorite piece of CanCon?
I don't know, maybe Fraggle Rock now after James's introduction. No, my name is Emily. I'm the sales director at Biblioasis. We are an independent press in Windsor, aka South Detroit, and we're in our 20th year this year. We are probably best known or most recently remembered by our Canadian friends for The Future, which won Canada Reads last year. We're in full Canada Reads mode again for 2025. Um, our American friends might know us best from Ducks Newburyport by Lucy Ellman. But my favorite piece of CanCon, I think, is Are You Afraid of the Dark? Scary Kids Canadian TV show where Ryan Gosling got his start. And favorite episode is Fear Soup, which is all about a delicious soup people can't get enough of in restaurants. And the secret ingredient is tears from scared children. Very formative and ridiculous.
Excellent. I'm scared already. Elham, hi. Tell us your favorite piece of CanCon.
Hi everyone, I'm Elham. I'm the trade marketing manager at ECW Press. We just celebrated 50 years last year, and you might know us for just the incredibly wide variety of books that we publish. We have something for absolutely everyone, but our special niche is pop culture books, particularly professional wrestling books and great music books. Like, I don't know if you've read it, Christina, but we did a great book about Leonard Cohen last fall. Hit me
I
up, I'll send you a
saw it.
copy.
It was a gorgeous cover. A gorgeous, gorgeous cover.
Oh, and my favorite piece of CanCon actually segues nicely from Emily's because mine is just Ryan Gosling, like as a person. I think, and I'm like an OG Ryan Gosling fan because I loved Are You Afraid of the Dark? And also Breaker High. If you haven't watched Breaker High, find it illegally online and watch it because it was a fun series about a high school on a boat where he played a goofy sidekick and really truly like real Canadian fans know that Ken from the Barbie movie was just his character from Breaker High, and it was refreshing to see him performing like that again.
Speaking of CanCon, I used to watch that on YTV. Wow, I can feel a toque growing on my head right now, eh? Let's talk books. Keep an eye on the chat as Olivia is going to share links to the ARC request form and the e-catalogs for you all to take a look at as we're chatting tonight. Now, let's get started. I am a lover of niche content, which means that I read a lot of nonfiction, and I won't ever turn down the opportunity to cram even more information into my brain. James, I'm still thinking about Big Mall from last spring. So, what does Coach House have for us this year?
Thank you, Christina. This spring, we have a book just out last week, Hypochondria by Will Rees. Will is the publisher of Peninsula Press from the UK, and this is a history of hypochondria, sort of the word, the idea. When we first encounter hypochondria, it's kind of interchangeable with the idea of melancholy. It just means sort of a low depression. And Will tracks sort of the earliest examples from this and how it becomes associated with medicine up to the present date. Will himself is a self-described hypochondriac. During university, he had a lot of medical anxiety and ended up seeing his doctor quite a lot, probably more than he should have for a headache that may not have even existed. So Will's okay self-applying the term, and he thinks it can be quite useful for people who are suffering from medical anxiety when they do. But the same term, when used from a doctor applied to a patient, is a way of dismissing them, especially traditionally in the way of doctors using this to dismiss women and their claims about their health. But of course, what we know now from post-pandemic, things like long COVID or people with compromised immune systems, that we know that a lot of strange symptoms can manifest in the body and maybe not be obvious for a long time. So Will goes through a history of famous hypochondriacs like Kafka or Henry David Thoreau, and looks at their journal entries and a lot of what they wrote about being like this. We have a blurb on here from the British psychoanalyst Adam Phillips, which is a really great example because, well, Adam Phillips uses a lot of examples of, say, Shakespeare and literature instead of actual case studies when writing about therapy and psychoanalysis. Will uses a lot of literature instead of medical text when talking about hypochondria and the history of it. This is a really great book. It's really, really smart. There's tons of history in here, pop culture references as well, right up to say like things like Seinfeld in the present tense and stuff. Just a fantastic book. I think post-pandemic, we're all thinking about health and sickness more and more, so this could be good for anyone. Hypochondria by Will Rees.
Incredible. I love a health book. So that is definitely going on my to-read list. I'm going to take a moment to talk to you guys about a great book from Anansi, In Too Deep by Matt Bobkin and Adam Feibel. So I'm going to say some names. I'm just going to throw them out there, and I want you guys to tell me what they all have in common, or I'll answer for you. But I want you to cast your minds back to the early 2000s when pop punk was taking over the MTV airwaves and Much Music. Sum 41, Simple Plan, Avril Lavigne, Beefy Dobson. What do they all have in common? Canadians, baby. In Too Deep is a fun, in-depth, and accessible deep dive on the Canadians that ruled the pop punk world at the dawn of the 21st century. Now, this is a title we're really excited about because it is sort of the first book of its kind. It's a really serious and loving appraisal of a very millennial moment in time. It features interviews and recollections from members of these aforementioned bands: Simple Plan, Marianas Trench, Beefy Dobson, Billy Talent, Alexis on Fire. Did somebody Google my high school playlist and turn it into a book? Possibly. We think this is like a really great companion to Walking Disaster by Derek Whibley. And we do expect, as you know, the march of time marches forward, more recollection and memoirs. And we're really excited to be the first book of its kind, this appraisal of this pop punk moment. In Too Deep, Matt Bobkin and Adam Feibel. Annick, what do you got for me?
First of all, In Too Deep is going to be going through my head all night, and I'm
Hell
not
yeah.
mad about it. So thanks for that. I'm going to talk about Ours to Tell, Reclaiming Indigenous Stories. This is the fourth collaboration by author duo Eldon Yellowhorn, who is a professor of archaeology and Indigenous studies at Simon Fraser, and Kathy Lowinger, an acclaimed children's writer and publisher. Their previous nonfiction books, including What the Eagle Sees and Sky Wolf's Call, both received many awards and starred reviews. Written for a YA audience, Ours to Tell is a wide-ranging anthology that profiles novelists, poets, graphic artists, historians, craftspeople, and mapmakers to present a history of Indigenous people from their own perspectives. In a recent starred review, School Library Journal said, "This luminous work is more than a collective biography. It's a reclamation of Indigenous stories, often manipulated, destroyed, and untold." The book is full color throughout, and each profile is accompanied by visuals such as archival photos and contemporary art, and it comes out on April 29th.
Cool. Incredible. Biblioasis, what do you have for me?
Okay, so I have for you our next entry into our Field Notes series, which is called On Oil by Don Gilmore. So our Field Notes, for people who aren't familiar, are these great kind of compact nonfiction books where we ask experts to write about topics that they are experts in. And they're short, accessible, kind of like an exploded essays, really great for nonfiction readers and non-nonfiction readers alike. So I had actually read John Gilmore's writing long before I worked at Biblioasis. I knew he was a wonderful writer. I was devastated by his account of his grief in To the River, which was out with Random House Canada in 2018. And I love the dark humor of Breaking and Entering, which I actually have on my desk here. That was out in 2023. And what I didn't know was Don also worked as a roughneck on an oil rig in Alberta during the oil boom of the 1970s. So, On Oil is a hard hitting look at our dependence and relationship with oil and how it's changed over the years. And yes, it deals with environmental devastation and disasters like you'd expect, but it's not a typical look at climate change. And I know I'm not alone when I say I can find some of those books hard and tough to get through since it kind of feels like a bad news dog pile at some point. And this book does not feel that way at all. On Oil is suffused with the warmth of Don Gilmore's voice, and his memories of his time in the oil field make the book compelling and enjoyable. And of course, he takes us in a couple unexpected directions. Like, did you know the petroleum industry has a lot of connections with the conservative Christian movement? And why are countries outside of North America making a faster transition to renewable resources? We're getting some great press for this that's starting to come in too. It just received a starred review from Publishers Weekly this weekend, where the reviewer said it was punchy and powerful, and this is a knockout. And I can't remember the last time I saw the word knockout used in a PW review.
Incredible. I love being devastated. So that's going on my list. ECW, what do you got?
So my nonfiction recommendation is actually one that's coming out a little bit later in the summer, but it's also perfectly timed. Waterborne, a 1,200-mile paddleboarding pilgrimage. And this is written by Dan Rubenstein. It is, like the subtitle says, a pilgrimage story, but it's also a piece of investigative journalism that explores the transformative effects of blue spaces and how important they are in our lives and in our cities. Blue spaces, of course, being like the water equivalent of green spaces. So the crux of this book is a journey, but it's a really unexpected one. It's incredibly improbable, super low stakes, not at all cool or glamorous. Dan, the author, over the course of 10 weeks, does a 1,200-mile paddleboarding journey where he goes from Ottawa, where he lives, to Montreal and then New York City, and then up to Toronto, and then back to Ottawa, all the time on a stand-up paddleboard with just a knapsack, no support team. And that sounds kind of cool, but it's not at all like a rugged adventure tale. Dan calls it his into the mild journey. So it's really kind of like an antidote or like a response to the very macho man versus nature adventure tale that we're used to seeing in this genre. Dan brings a lot of really good humor to the book, as well as like a very strong sense of his own vulnerability, using it as an opportunity to like listen, learn, and connect with other humans, as well as with waterfront areas as he's traveling. Woven through the narrative is also Dan's research. He has a lot of conversations with a diverse group of scientists, conservationists, athletes, civic-minded volunteers, environmentalists, pretty much anybody he meets along the way who's like willing to strike up a conversation with this like short, smelly, slow-moving dude on the water. But at the heart of it is this investigative piece about the benefits of blue space and why it's really good for us to have these spaces in our communities. The author is Dan Rubenstein, in response to the comment. It's also a book about human connection, environmental stewardship, and reconciliation. It's not just a book for stand-up paddleboarders, even though from what I've heard, there are a lot of them. They're a big community, silent but powerful. It's for lovers of nature writing, who want something a little bit different from that typical man versus wild narrative, people who love thoughtful investigations, and anyone who's ever just felt like a sense of peace while looking at a body of water.
Incredible. You mentioned Into the Mild, and I was thinking while you're saying that it's giving John Krakauer. I am so excited to read all of these books. These were incredible. They are going onto my niche fun facts, and I can't wait to pull them out when I compete on Jeopardy one day. Thank you, everyone. Now, next up, we have an extra special video from our friends at Annick.
Hi, I'm Laura Bonche, author of the picture book When the Air Sang. It's the story of a young girl named Annie who loves insects and is overjoyed to discover that periodical cicadas have been waiting in her backyard for 17 years. I'd like to read you an excerpt from the middle of the book, where Annie is just about to see the first signs of live cicadas. Outside, the ground had come to life. It rippled and swirled and heaved. "It's incredible," whispered Annie. She had never seen so many insects at once. "Will they sing tonight?" She tried to imagine the songs Great-Grandma had mentioned. Would cicadas whine like mosquitoes, buzz like bees, or maybe call out their names like katydids? But Grandma shook her head. Their bodies aren't ready yet. First, they must climb to safety. Annie groaned. More waiting? Maybe she should just forget about the cicadas' songs. There were plenty of other creatures to observe.
Incredible. Thank you to Laura Bonche for taking some time to discuss When the Air Sang, and that is coming April 8th from Annick. It's time to get so real with you guys. I got into publishing for one reason and one reason alone, the illustrations. The wonder and whimsy of a good picture book or an illustrated story reminds me of what made me love reading in the first place. So, children's publishers, let's spotlight some illustrators. We'll start with Groundwood Books, the children's imprint of House of Anansi, with Every Belly, written and illustrated by Tao Lam. Next slide, please. All right, so we're gonna go and spend a day at the pool with Maddie and her mom. Since Maddie is about waist high on all the adults, she can't help but notice that everybody has a belly. Maddie muses on all the different types of bellies: wrinkly bellies, tattooed bellies, pregnant bellies, insulin monitored bellies, stretch mark bellies, six-pack bellies, all kinds and more. This is a really lovely celebration of body diversity because everybody has a belly. We think this is a really great addition to the canon of books on body positivity, like Hair Love, the T.D. Prize winner Boobies by Nancy Vo, also published by Groundwood, and Lovely. And Tao Lam is the author and illustrator of this, bringing her distinctive cut paper collages. It's immediately recognizable to fans like her prior works. You may have heard of Happy Birthday to Me, One Giant Leap, My Cat Looks Like My Dad, and The Paper Boat. I really like how expressive Maddie is. I like how colorful this book is. I really think it works so well to have like a waist high character just observing everybody's bellies. Yeah, love Every Belly by Tao Lam. See, look at her lying on her mom's stomach. We have elicited many emotional reactions from people who just pick up this book and read it. Just at the musing of a little girl wondering about her mom and her mom's belly. It's very body positivity forward. Anyways, that comes April 1st, so about 2-3 weeks from now. That's Every Belly by Tao Lam, and we'll move on to Annick.
Awesome. The book that I wanted to talk about here is The Biggest Smallest Thing, and it has illustrations by Anna Stratku. Next slide, please. So, written by Sarah DeWall, this adorable picture book is set during the school science fair. The students are tasked with the challenge of making something big from something small. As an aspiring chemist, our protagonist Mo is sure he's got this in the bag. While his talented classmates include a great musician, a very fast runner, a food connoisseur, and a girl who wants to be a cat, surely they don't stand a chance next to a serious scientist like him, do they? This book highlights the importance of creativity in science. It's a real STEAM title and provides many examples that demonstrate how science can be found all around us. The artwork really helps to illuminate how fun this challenge can be, and Anna's tiny details, such as the accessories each kid is wearing, showcase elements of their personalities. This book is for kids 4 to 7, and it comes out on April 8th.
I love it. It's so sweet. I want to be friends with this little group of kids.
They're so cool, right?
They are. What incredible artwork. I'm positive that all of our inner children are ready for story time with these reads. My outer adult, meanwhile, she is ready for the summer. And now that the sun is setting later and later, I'm getting into a summery state of mind. And nothing says summer to me more than the following: a deck chair, a crisp Coca-Cola, some sunscreen, and a great book. So tell me, what is a great book that I can take with me to the nearest body of water this summer? Why don't we start with Alham at ECW?
For sure. So, according to the Book Riot article that I read, in order to define what exactly a beach read is, the qualities that make a good beach read are escapism, joy, compulsive readability, a summer setting, and ideally a romance as well. And I think you can find all of these in Fran Kimmel's latest novel, Cattail Lane, which is coming out on April 15th. So Fran writes the best feel-good stories, and Cattail Lane is no exception. It's the perfect story about ordinary people struggling and ultimately coming together at the end. And when the world is just like one big dumpster fire, Fran's books will really make you believe that in the fundamental goodness of humanity. So this book starts off with a letter. It goes, "Dear Nick, you have a son. His name is Billy. It's time for you to come get him. He's a good boy." And with just those 4 lines, Nick Ackerman's life is turned upside down. He learns that he has a 14-year-old son whose grandmother can no longer take care of him because of her dementia. And so Nick is suddenly flung into fatherhood, having to take in the very resentful Billy while his grandma is sent off to a dementia ward. Things get off to a rocky start. Nick struggles with his new caretaking role, while Billy can't seem to let go of the caretaking role that he had over his grandmother. But luckily, there's Sarah, who's a single mother and a housekeeper in the dementia ward, to help them navigate their new situation. And it's Sarah that Nick looks to as a parental role model and maybe as something more. It's a really sweet and compassionate read. Cattail Lane is such a moving exploration of forgiveness, second chances, and these sort of everyday moments where we might find our way to one another. And it kind of combines like the very heartwarming vibes of A Man Called Ova with the higher emotional stakes of like an Anne Tyler novel. If you know Fran from her previous book, 2018's No Good Asking, that one was nominated for a number of awards. It was a great group read selection. And just putting it out there, it's like if you loved that, that was like the Christmas winter version of Cattail Lane. So read Cattail Lane in the summer and then pick up No Good Asking when you're looking for something equally cozy and heartwarming in the wintertime. Or read them both now, why not?
Incredible. Sorry, I was staring at the chat there for a second. Heartwarming. I love getting my heart warmed while I'm also getting warm in the sun. Incredible. Biblioasis, you're up next.
Okay, I'm gonna propose an alternate thing that makes a great beach read. Sometimes the best thing about a beach read is that it's an amazing description of a place that you're really glad you don't have to be, like school. And Dark Like Under by Alice Chadwick is my pick for a beach read. I'd say it's kind of like a brainy beach read. There's a lot to consider in it, and basically it's set in an elite boarding school in the 1980s in the UK, and it asks the question, what if your beloved teacher died and they just decided that school should continue as usual? What would you be doing between the bells? What would come to the surface throughout the day? And it is a circadian novel, which means it's only set within 24 hours. So the plot is tightly knotted around these two friends, Tin, a girl who rules the school and is beloved and feared, which I feel like we all knew her at one point, and Rachel, her best friend, who is much more in her shadow, but who has just betrayed her. The story unravels over the course of the single day, and secrets just begin to emerge in this kind of pressure cooker environment. This novel really has something for all sorts of readers, fans of dark academia, people who love complex female characters and friendships, and anyone who likes a mystery. It's also set in the 80s, so I mean, if you are from the 80s and 90s, then you're going to feel very nostalgic reading it. If you miss those decades, then everything is going to seem very novel to you. Notes are being passed, not texted throughout. And it's the kind of book that sticks with you and begs to be discussed. It published in the UK a few months ago, and it is coming out in May in North America. We've had some really great UK media so far, including reviews that just rolled in from Vogue and Mary Claire and The Guardian, The Observer, and The Bookseller. And The Independent just named it a most anticipated book of 2025. The title is Dark Like Under by Alice Chadwick, and you can find that in the ARC request form.
Propulsive.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Emily. And I'm going to keep it on the mystery kick by talking about a cozy mystery that House of Anansi is really excited to bring to you guys called Widows and Orphans by Elizabeth Renzetti and Kate Hilton. This is the highly anticipated sequel to last year's Bury the Lead. And to catch you up to speed, Kat Conway, our protagonist, is a brilliant, ball-busting Toronto-based journalist whose mid-career slump led her to the Quill and Packet, a small-time newspaper in the cottage country town of Port Ellis, Ontario. In the first novel, and her first assignment, Kat solved the murder of a legendary actor who died on stage on the opening night of Port Ellis's beloved and niche summer theater season. This time around, an influencer turns up dead. Surprise? At a wellness and self-actualization summit that Kat is once again assigned to, and suspicion falls on the high-profile mommy bloggers and the widows with attitude featured guests. Kat inadvertently finds herself on the case again for another murder. And if that weren't enough, the Quill and Packet is facing financial demise. There is a convoy of protesters angry at Kat's reporting, and her prima donna mom is in town to attend the summit. How does Kat balance this all? Well, you've got to read to find out. So, by virtue of this taking place in cottage country, this to me is by definition a beach read, but you can read it anywhere. It's a great holiday read. You can read it at the beach, by the lake, by the fireplace, anywhere. It's topical without being heavy-handed, and for readers who are smart, independent, and with feminist leanings like Kat herself. That's Widows and Orphans by Liz Renzetti and Kate Hilton. You don't need to read the first book in the series. I basically gave you all the info you need to know before going into book number 2. It is Widows and Orphans, and it is the second book in the Quill and Packet mystery series. And it's coming out May 1st. Let's move on to Coach House. What's your beach read?
Oh, I got a real silly one for you here right now. So I would like to tell you about Enjoy Your Stay at the Shamrock Motel by Andrew Kaufman. Andrew's best known for his first novel that we did for him about 15 years ago called All My Friends Are Superheroes. He's written several novels since then, including The Tiny Wife, The Waterproof Bible, and before this for us, The Ticking Heart. Andrew's a magical realist writer and one of the funniest people you'll ever read. So, The Shamrock Motel. Let's say you're having problems in your love life. You're unlucky in love. Maybe you're at a crossroads in a relationship, unsure where to go next. And let's say you were to go take a drive. You may find yourself at the Shamrock Motel. You can't go looking for it. There's no number to call, but if you just go for a drive when you're in a state like this, you may find yourself there. And if you go in and ask the owner for a room, you have to ask. She's not going to give it to you. She will give you a key to a room just for you. And if you go to this room, something magical and definitely weird and sexual will happen to you in this room, and it will smack you out of your funk. I guarantee this. Everyone who goes into one of these rooms is in a bad place, and they emerge reborn and comfortable with themselves, confident in their future. It's a beautiful, beautiful book. These are linked short stories. Each one starts off sort of introducing us to our characters having trouble with their love life, with relationships, with themselves in some way. And then we find them at the Shamrock Motel, where they will say, make love to the sun, or find a long-term relationship with a bear, like a literal physical bear, or maybe even be transported to a world full of gnomes that will talk to you about, well, I can't even get into that because there might be children present. But this is a very funny book. If you do find some time on the beach, this is a very fun, uplifting book. It's very funny. It's very sexy and weird in that way. But it's a lot of fun. Andrew will keep you laugh. I promise you will laugh while reading this book. It's very sex positive in a way. There are queer stories in here. There's straight stories. There's just a lot of odd sex happening for everyone all over the place. This will make you laugh. It'll titillate you. It'll really be a good summer read. It's out this June. Enjoy your stay at the Shamrock Motel by Andrew Kaufman.
Wow. I love a silly book, and a silly little book. Maybe not the sexual content, but the silliness is the perfect lead in to talk about my children's beach read, Rock by Laura Croza and Matt James. So this is a picture book, and it's already out. It came out on March 4th. It's a picture book for 3 to 6-year-olds. Now, one day on a beach, and after mistaking our titular rock for food, a seagull asks, "Who do you think you are?" "I'm a rock," the rock replies. This isn't a good enough explanation for the seagull, who is a certified hater. The rock can't just be a rock. It might be a pebble or a stone, and one day it'll drift back into the ocean where it will erode into millions of little pieces. Sand, a speck, nothing. It's not even special. Doesn't the rock agree? All the seagulls do. The rock, however, is steadfast in its belief in itself. "I am a rock" are the only words they need to say. Eventually, the seagull is shooed away by a little girl who affirms that the rock is exactly what it knows itself to be, a rock. This is an existential picture book about resilience and identity. It explores the concepts of identity, self-confidence, and resilience, even against bullies or, seagulls. Uh, it's got very dramatic illustrations, and the spare text make this a really standout picture book. It is perfect for read-alongs. Kids are gonna love saying, "I am a rock." The rock is the star of Groundwood's Spring 25 season. And it's already out March 4th. And again, that is Rock by, oh my God, you have it. Oh, incredible. It is, I gotta say, also one more thing before we move on. The ASMR quality of the rock on the cover, you guys gotta touch this rock. If you get your hands on a copy of Rock, you gotta touch it. It feels so crispy. Incredible. Rock,
Do you want me to do the ASMR?
do it.
Could you hear that?
No. Hold it up to your mic.
I'm trying. Okay. I was
It's
never
okay.
meant to be an ASMR star.
It's okay. That just means that everyone will have to order it to touch it themselves. That's Rock by Laura Croza and illustrated by Matt James. It's out now. It came out on March 4th. I can smell the Hawaiian tropic now. Thank you, everyone, for sharing your beach reads with us. Okay, as much as we hate to admit it, everybody judges a book by its cover. And boy, does Team Indie Social crank out some incredible covers. So, friends, what's your favorite cover on this season? Bonus points if you have an extra fun fact about it. Let's start with Elham.
For sure. So my favorite cover of this season, and honestly, one of my favorite covers of this entire year, is Lake Burnt Shore by Erin Kruder. It's also a summer novel, and I think you really get that feeling in the colors. It's so beautiful and eye-catching, and again, just like really captures that summer camp vibe. I also love, my favorite thing about it is the details in it. You can't really see it, but if you zoom in really close or like get your hands on a copy of the book, you'll see that the background essentially like it's meant to look like a camp patch or a scout badge. So the background is stitched on and all of the text and the black details are cut out felt. And you really can like see that texture. I love looking at this cover because every single time I do, I notice something different and I can appreciate it from a different angle. It's so stunning. This is a debut novel by an award-winning poet and academic, Aaron Kruder. And in all of his works, whether it's the poetry or the nonfiction, Aaron's always looking at themes of Jewish identity, belonging, and settler colonialism. And so in his new novel, he approaches those themes in a really fun, campy way that's still very heartrending. It's a work of political satire that's perfect for fans of Gabrielle Zevin's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, or the 2023 film Theater Camp. So the main character of this story is Ruby. It's set in the summer of 2013. She's 21 years old and is really excited for summer camp to start. She's a counselor at Camp Burnt Shore. But then on the first day of camp, a bunch of her fellow counselors are caught smoking weed and are fired on the spot. And so Brent, the camp owner's son, decides to fill in this staffing shortfall by hiring Israeli soldiers to be the camp counselors. And Ruby, who's a committed anti-Zionist, must decide if she's willing to jeopardize her place at Burnt Shore in order to fight Brent over these really contentious issues of Jewish belonging and settler colonialism, even as she also finds herself falling in love with one of the soldiers, the sweetly handsome Itai. It soon becomes clear that this conflict is not just about Israel-Palestine, though. It's also about the camp's own relationship with the neighboring Black Spruce First Nations, which is being strained because Brent has a larger scheme to buy all of the crown land surrounding the lake. And as the summer progresses and the campers go swimming and enjoy canoe trips and stage an over-the-top musical, Ruby is also struggling to save her beloved camp from greed and colonialism. Like I said, this is very much a social satire and a political commentary, but it's also a fun, campy romance all rolled into one. Comedian Gabe Liedman called it a funny, frank, and sexy, and said that Aaron Kruder's storytelling will transport you to your coziest, most carefree memories while also holding up a mirror to the adult that you've become. And ECW's own Wabgishig Rice, who wrote Moon of the Crusted Snow, called it ambitious in theme and impressively effective in narrative, and really praised how the book unpacks all of the really harmful impacts of colonialism with a lot of nuance and care. While it's not quite beachy, this is another great summer read because of that summer camp setting. But it's especially for readers who want like a little bit more heft in their summer reading or members of book clubs. And we are going to have book club questions to go along with this book. It's coming out April 22nd, but I think we might have gotten some early copies in. So if you want to read it, please do check it off in the ARC request form. And I can't wait for you to see it in person and see all of the details on the cover.
I can't wait to pick this up and soak in all those details. Coach House, let's talk covers.
Hello. First of all, shout out to Warren in the comments for the love there. And sorry, I'm going to talk about Horsefly again, but yes, here we have Horsefly by Marielle Gagné, translated by Pablo Strauss, who is best known for translating What I Know About You, which was shortlisted for the Giller last year. It's one of our best French translators. This is a translation from Quebec. We do many translations from Quebec, and they have been described as people go to the woods and horrible things happen. This is no different. So this book happens this summer, the summer of 2025, and a plague of horseflies has descended on Quebec City during a heat wave. So everyone's already very irritable because of the heat, and now there's just flies everywhere bothering you. But, and then worse than that, if you get bit by a horsefly, you end up acting very impulsive or violent even. Our main character, Theodore, is a factory worker, and he gets bit by a horsefly. Afterwards, what he does is he rushes to the nursing home his grandfather is in, takes him out of there really impulsively, and takes him to the island in the St. Lawrence, where he was born and raised. The second narrative is what happened when his grandfather was a young man on this island. There was a lot of chemical weapons testing by the Canadian government in the St. Lawrence River on these little remote communities during World War II. That's a historical fact, and it's sort of based off with that. So I won't reveal too much, but something has happened during World War II on this island that has created the horsefly pandemic that we have in the current present. The third narrative is from one of the horseflies itself, the one who's stalking Theodore slowly and taking its time. It's watching all the other horseflies just go to town on whoever they want, but this horsefly has fallen in love with Theo and is now tracking him, waiting for the perfect moment to bite him. It's very creepy. It's a climate fiction, so this is science fiction based off climate change. It's high paced as well. As more people get bitten by the horseflies, the world becomes more and more chaotic. The horsefly itself becomes the bad guy by the end, and then by the end is sort of gloating over all of us about what they're about to do. It's a very creepy book. Like I said, climate fiction. Horror fans will love this a lot as well. We had an incredible blurb from the American horror writer Brian Evanson, which I've lost, but it's really good. He really loves it. It was excellent. So yeah, Horsefly by Marielle Gagnier, translated by Pablo Strauss. Good for science fiction fans, good for horror fans. It's a bit of a beach read. Like, who am I to judge you? Read this on the beach if you want to.
I will. I will be reading this on the beach. Add it to my list. Biblioasis. What do we got?
All right. Well, I had to choose Old Romantics by Maggie Armstrong as my favorite cover because I'm sure if you have been on one of these before, you probably know that I love short stories. And I also think they're the ideal summer read because you can read a complete piece while finishing a drink on a patio. And I think this cover perfectly embodies that idea. So, Old Romantics by Maggie Armstrong. We have all either had or known people who have had terrible significant others. For example, I dated a guy who didn't like strawberries because they were too mainstream. But Maggie Armstrong's characters have it even worse. How do you react when a guy you're on a date with won't chip in for a slice of pizza and then you discover he's a Scottish lord who is actually 32nd in line for the throne? What if you found your future husband, but he just doesn't know you're getting married yet? What if he just thinks you're roommates? I laughed out loud several times reading Old Romantics. It's a collection of interlinked short stories where every character's name is a variation on Maggie, and each one is kind of a hot mess. Maggie has written a very funny and feminist spin on the sad girl genre, where she fights the patriarchy and injects some autobiographical views where you see her grow and mature as a writer. My colleague slash Maggie's editor called this Fleabag James Joyce. And in fact, we love that so much that we made up matching pins that match our Old Romantics cover that say Fleabag James Joyce. And I'm sure we can toss one in with an arc if this is something you'd like to read. We've had great reviews coming in from the UK so far, and the Irish Times named it one of the best 10 Irish novels of the past 10 years, right next to Sally Rooney's Intermezzo. So whether you're in the mood to watch relationships grow sour or you just want something to read with a pisco sour, there's a story here for you.
Wow. Send me a pin right now. Right now.
They're really good.
Log off, send it to me right now. You can do that while I talk about House of Anansi's pick, A Daughter's Place. I love this cover. This is a Gorgina cover to me. This is a painting dated from Golden Age Spain. It is called Two Women at a Window by Bartolomé Esteban Murillo. It was painted, as I mentioned, during Golden Age Spain, which is the time period that A Daughter's Place takes place during. Born illegitimate, 15-year-old Isabel's life is uprooted when her mother dies. Disguised as a maid and living with her father's sister and niece, Isabel yearns to break free from the rigid constraints of Spanish society. All the while, Miguel's wife, Catalina, remains blissfully aware of her husband's daughter the next town over. Now, I said Miguel, and I forgot to mention up at the very top, by Miguel, I mean Miguel de Cervantes, the legendary writer of Don Quixote and one of the most influential literary figures of all time. So this is a historical fiction, if you haven't already guessed, by Marta Batiz. You might recognize Marta's name. She previously published a short story collection, No Stars in the Sky, with House of Anansi in 2022. Historical fiction, it's so hot right now. This book was intentionally written in simple, accessible language, like one of its many inspirations, Don Quixote, meaning one doesn't have to be an expert in Golden Age Spain to get this book. It is unique and exciting. We've got blurbs on this from Nita Prose and Roberta Rich. We think that this would be great for lovers of books like The Paris Wife and Z, a novel of Zelda Fitzgerald. It's a historical novel of family secrets. If you love intrigue, family secrets, love, and life in the shadows of a much more famous historical man, A Daughter's Place by Marta Batiz is for you. It is coming on May 20th, 2025. So be sure to check that off so you can get this gorgeous, gorgeous cover in your hands. Annick?
Hello. So for this question, I chose Our Ancestors' Kitchen, which is by Willie Pohl and illustrated by Shakira David. Some of the first words in this book are, our ancestors teach us that there are memories in our meals. There is magic in our cooking. There is culture in our food. And I think this cover conveys these ideas beautifully. Our Ancestors' Kitchen is a wonderful picture book that celebrates traditional Indigenous harvesting, foods, and the connections built with family members across generations. In the book, readers join a young girl as her grandmother teaches her to prepare her grandfather's favorite recipe. As each ingredient is prepared for the dish, a memory or blood memory, ancestral knowledge passed down through generations, appears, showcasing each instance of gathering, hunting, and harvesting foods in the traditional ways throughout the seasons. The author, Willie Pohl, is also an activist and educator, and she's passionate about traditional harvesting methods. In an author's note included in the book, she writes about the ecological knowledge that comes from such practices. She wants kids to think about where their food comes from and the relationship between humans and the plants and animals we use to sustain ourselves. The age range for this book is 4 to 7, and it comes out on April 1st.
I was talking and I was muted, and all I'd wanted to say is that's a beautiful cover, Sarah. Thank you for telling us about it. And now we'll do our final favorite cover from Groundwood, and it's Shy Me by Sandra V. Fetter and illustrated by Ashley Barron. So, Shy Me is a picture book. It's already out, much like Rock. It's out as of March 4th. This is the newest addition to the Emotions and Me series. You might recognize the earlier titles, Peaceful Me and Angry Me. This is a picture book written in the same style, explaining why a child might feel shy, how they might express that feeling, and how you can cope with it. You can feel shy when making a new friend, or being in a crowded place, or being on stage. When someone is shy, they can try to be brave and identify what might help. It can help to go slow, find a quiet place, practice, and noticing the shyness in others too. Ashley Barron utilizes cut paper collage illustrations for this book, and our protagonist joins the pantheon of icons, like on the covers of Peaceful Me and Angry Me. What makes me love this cover is I love how well Ashley Barron captured shyness. Like this boy he makes my heart grow 3 sizes. I want to help build his confidence. He's so shy. He's just like, no. Um, some of you may have seen our Instagram post featuring me imitating the cover of Shy Me. I'm obsessed with him. I'm obsessed with this kid. So as I mentioned, this is the third book in the Emotions in Me series, which started with the very popular Angry Me and continued with Peaceful Me. This book fits really nicely into social emotional learning collections and would be a great pick for anyone interested in those topics or fans of the series. This is a different illustrator than we've had on the first 2 books in the series, but Ashley Barron is not an unfamiliar name to Groundwood Books. She previously illustrated This is a Fragile Snake by Nicholas Rudock for us. That is Shy Me by Sandra V. Fetter and illustrated by Ashley Barron, and it is already out. You can have this shy child on a book cover for yourself right now. Wow. Where did the time go? So many great books, so little time. Now, beloved audience, you might have noticed that Team Indie Social has one big thing in common. We're all Canadian. Yeah, we're all Canadian. Land of poutine, maple leaves, and a long history of great books. So let's take one more moment to celebrate CanCon. Team Indie Social, I want you guys to think about one backlist classic that everyone should read. I will go first. I want to tell everybody about Kids in the Hall by Paul Myers. Full title, Kids in the Hall, One Dumb Guy. It's hardcover. It came out in 2018, and it is the definitive account biography of the comedy troupe, The Kids in the Hall. 80s and 90s kids will 100% remember Kids in the Hall. They were hugely influential. The show aired for 6 seasons on the CBC, and it was produced by Lorne Michaels, a name that you might remember. Yes, Priscilla, exactly. A name that you might recognize for being the longtime producer of SNL. So Kids in the Hall is well researched, incredibly in depth, with the full participation of all 5 kids in the hall. It's funny, it's informative. Paul Myers did some excellent work researching this. There's so many incredible celebs that contributed their time to this book. Seth Meyers, who wrote the foreword, Judd Apatow, the late Gary Shandling, Mike Myers, Paul's brother, Michael Ian Black, Brent Butt, and more. So this is a real celebration of Canadian comedy. And I think one of the greatest strengths of Canadian-American relations are our integrated comedy scenes, from Second City in Toronto to Second City in Chicago. And I won't say too much more other than to tease that Paul has another book coming out in the Great Canadian Pantheon that I'll tell you guys about in the fall. But the subject rhymes with Schmon Schmandy. Okay. Moving on to Coach House.
Thank you, Christina. I'm cheating a little here because, well, this is our backlist, and that makes it a Canadian book. The translator, Joseph Patrick Stencil, is Canadian, but the author, Cyril Martinez, author of The Dark Library, is actually from France. The Dark Library, I love talking about this book so much. I bring it to every book fair, every convention we go to, because it is a bookseller's book, is a book person's book. It's literally a book where the books are characters themselves. This came out in 2020, just during the pandemic, pretty much the worst time a book had come out. So it's now my word of mouth that is championing this book. So in this book, we are introduced to a strange library, and all of the books are the characters. Like I said, we have the classic book, who is very confident that they're going to be there forever. We have the new book, the best-selling book, who is feeling very chuffed that they're getting checked out so much. And we have like the weird self-published book that doesn't quite know how it made it in there. No one's paying attention to it. We have like the lost classic. All these different books are talking to each other in dialogue, and they're very scared because no one's checking them out as much as they used to anymore. As confident as some of them are, they're looking around and seeing more and more people in the library on laptops and using computers and things like that. And there's a group of students that's coming to digitize them, and they're not quite sure what's happening. So it follows all of this sort of anxiety with the books. Also, if that wasn't enough, there is a secret cult of librarians in this library based out of it. And they are also assassins, and they are killing people outside of the library. Why? That's a mystery. I can't tell you too much about it. It's going to stay mysterious, but it's related to the books. We're following the books. We're following the librarians. They're dressed in weird cloaks, by the way. They're going around murdering people with ceremonial daggers. It is tense. It's magical realist. It's like I said, if you love books, if you enjoy libraries, this is a weird overall comment on libraries, on books, and the direction they're headed in. The Dark Library by Cyril Martinez, translated by Joseph Patrick Stencil. Give it a try. Customers love this one, I gotta say.
I'm eyeing my books suspiciously. They're right there in that corner. Thank you for that, James. Annick, what's your favorite piece of Canadian backlist?
Well, one that I wanted to share is the Bare Naked book. This was written by Kathy Stinson, author of children's classics Red is Best and Big or Little, and it was originally published in 1986. In 2021, we released an updated hardcover and a paperback followed in 2023. In these new editions, the text has been amended to reflect current understandings of gender and inclusion, which are also showcased in the brand new, vibrant illustrations by Melissa Cho. There's a wonderful range of bodies featured. We see children and adults of different races and genders, but we also see tattoos, piercings, scars, and stretch marks. And I am personally pleased that this isn't the only kids' books with stretch marks that we've seen tonight. But as the book says, every body is different. In a starred review, Kirk has called it a joyous celebration of all bodies, and it is for ages 3 to 5.
Amazing. Thank you, Sarah. Biblioasis, Canadian backlist.
Okay, the Canadian backlist book I have to recommend tonight is called The Power of Story: On Truth, the Trickster, and New Fictions for a New Era, and it's by Harold R. Johnson. So this book is actually the product of a night where Harold R. Johnson, a beloved lawyer, a Governor General Award winner, and a member of the Cree Nation, was asked by an ecumenical society to host a multi-faith gathering at his home for a group that wanted to hear him speak about the power of storytelling. And it turned into many nights over many pots of teas, and he made it into this book. So, with warmth and humor, he explains how storytelling touches every aspect of human life, from our identities and histories to social contracts and societal structures. He makes it clear how storytelling can actually be directed to reform our own lives and the lives that we share. And while this book does contain some warnings, it really is above all optimistic, and it invites us to imagine and create the world we want to live in. So sadly, Harold passed away in 2022, but part of what I've enjoyed so much about this book is watching people discover him through his words. It's a perennial favorite for universities, and actually we recently had an American college adopt it as their one book, the book that all their incoming freshmen are required to read. Personally, I have a wonderful memory with this book where I was working a book fair with my 9-year-old nephew who was helping me sling stock, and someone asked him what his favorite book was, and he very confidently held up Harold Johnson's The Power of Story and said, "This one." And I asked him afterwards, why was that one your favorite? And he says, well, I think stories are important too. So it truly is a must for anyone who loves and passes on stories as part of your daily work and as part of your life.
That kid was made to sell books, Emily.
He loved it. Like when we went on lunch, he was like, okay, that's enough. Let's get back to selling books.
Iconic. That's a little icon. I'm going to take a moment to talk about Groundwood's Canadian backlist pick. And it is also kind of cheating because it's The Year of Fire by Teddy Jam and Ian Wallace. And while it was originally published in 1992, the Groundwood team thought it was really pertinent to reissue it in the year 2025. It's an early chapter book, 5 chapters, 48 pages. It's a great early chapter reader. Teddy Jam, you might recognize from books like Night Cars. He unfortunately passed away in 2001, but Ian Wallace is also Canadian. You might recognize him from books like Chin Chiang's Dragon Dance. Once again, blanked on titles. I'm reading too many words today. It's a Groundwood classic. It was originally published in 1992, and the subject matter, wildfires, makes for a timely reissue. A grandfather shares the memory of a great wildfire that devastated his hometown in 1919 to his granddaughter. Over 5 chapters, grandfather explains how the fire began, how the town banded together and rushed to try and fight it, how homes were destroyed, and ultimately how the town rebuilt itself. Now, this is not a scary book. It is very gentle and hopeful. With the passage of time, grandfather not only remembers details of the fire, but also the good and bad things that came out of it, the humor that came out of it, the community spirit that kept the town going, and how funny it was the time that his mother had to put butter on his brother's eyebrows after they were burnt off while fighting the fire. This is a story of survival, community, and hope. Ian Wallace's gentle illustrations from pen, ink, and watercolor make this really, really feel like a comforting read in spite of the somewhat distressing subject matter. I am a really big fan of how warm this book feels. And we thought it was a really timely reissue. Of course, wildfires are a very, very, very hot topic, no pun intended. But they continue to be something that kids have questions about and are scared of and worry about, and that'll only continue to increase with time. So, Year of Fire, a backlist classic that is deservingly being brought to the front. ECW with our final book of the night. Let's go, let's go, let's go.
So our final book is kind of a fun full circle moment because, like your Kids in the Hall book, this is a definitive biography about 5 Canadians doing big things. So the book I wanted to present is The Never-Ending Present: The Story of Gord Downie and the Tragically Hip by Michael Barkley. So I mentioned also earlier that ECW were very big on pop culture books, and that includes a lot of music books. And so I wasn't starved for choice when it came to choosing one for this. We've got books about Joni Mitchell, Leonard Cohen, Celine Dion, Shania Twain. But when I was trying to decide which book to present, I wanted to do one that was very decidedly Canadian because the Tragically Hip reached enormous heights of success in Canada, but throughout their career were never quite able to cross over into the US, which was something that they always had to answer a lot of questions about, but they were very proud in saying, like, this is not a loss for us. Like, we're not sad that we haven't been able to break into the US. We're a Canadian band. And their music very much reflects that. So the Tragically Hip were formed in Kingston, Ontario in 1984 and would go on to become one of the best-selling Canadian bands or musical acts of all time. They sold millions and millions of records. 9 of their 14 studio albums hit #1 on the charts in Canada. They've won 14 Juno Awards, which is like the Canadian version of the Grammys, and all 5 members have been inducted into the Order of Canada, which is Canada's highest honor. The band was fronted by Gord Downie, who was described in a New York Times piece as having no American equivalent. They said, imagine if Bruce Springsteen, Bob Dylan, and Michael Stipe combined into one sensitive, oblique poet-philosopher, and you're getting close. So the band, for 30 years, had this enormous success, but that all came to a bit of a grinding halt in 2015 when frontman Gord Downie announced that he had been diagnosed with terminal brain cancer. So in 2016, the band released one last album and went on one last cross-Canada tour, which ended in their hometown and was broadcast live, with over a third of the country's population tuning in to watch it. We throw the word iconic around a lot these days, but truly the Tragically Hip were that. They defined a generation of Canadian rock music and are still very much a hallmark of Canadian culture today. Just last year, at the Toronto International Film Festival, they premiered a 4-part documentary series called The Tragically Hip No Dress Rehearsal, which you can now stream on, I think, Amazon Prime. The book, however, The Never-Ending Present, was released in 2018, and it was the first ever print biography of this iconic Canadian band and their incredible impact. And that was really reflected in the sales. The book was a huge hit. The hardcover edition was #1 on the bestseller, was a #1 national bestseller, and spent 4 months on bestseller lists in Canada. The Toronto Life magazine called it the definitive Tragically Hip Bible. Author Michael Barkley interviewed dozens of the band's peers, producers, and friends, not just to get the story behind the band and their careers and success, but also an insider's look at, like, what was it like dealing with disease through art? What was Gord Downie's role in reconciliation with Indigenous communities in Canada? And what was the Tragically Hip's role in Canadian culture as a whole? This is a book not just for Tragically Hip fans, who are plenty. Rick Mercer, who's a very famous Canadian comedian, has a joke where he says that, like, the reason that the Tragically Hip couldn't break into the US was because every time they had a show there, all the Canadians would immediately buy out all the tickets. So they were selling out like stadiums, but it was just Canadians in the audience. But it's also for fans of like music biographies, for music level lovers, people who are literally like Canadian curious and want to learn more about our culture, and anyone who's interested just in how culture can spark conversations. Michael Barclay is an incredible music writer and a journalist. He spent years writing at Maclean's magazine before he published The Never-Ending Present, and more recently, you might know him from Hearts on Fire, which came out in, I think, 2022. And that looks at the 5 years that changed Canadian music from 2000 to 2005. So again, some great companion reads if you want to learn more about the Canadian music scene. You can pick up Hearts on Fire it's available in paperback now. Sorry, The Never-Ending Present is available in paperback now. Hearts on Fire is in hardcover, but might come out in paperback eventually.
Very cool. Thank you, Elham. My biggest regret to this day is that I was not in Canada on the day of the Tragically Hip's goodbye concert. I was in Chile, which was a fun trip. It was a great trip, but I feel like I felt some serious FOMO not being here and not seeing our recently resigned Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in a Canadian tuxedo. So cool. Wow, 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 wow. What amazing books, guys. We did it. Thank you so much to my friends on Team Indie Social and to the real stars of the show, our booksellers and librarians in the virtual audience. You guys make working in publishing an absolute dream. Thank you for supporting our books, our authors, and for curating the content that we so desperately need. We're going to send a short survey and a recording of this chat around, as well as a link to this video that you are welcome to share to anybody who wasn't able to make it tonight. As always, we hope to see you guys again in the fall. And since you have registered for this event, you'll get all the info about that once it's ready. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Good night.